Well, hello there. How are you guys doing? This is Naturalist James Anderson from the Marion County Park District. Hopefully you're doing well. And today's Natural Lessons episode, we're going to be talking about Paw Paws. It's probably one of my most favorite things to do during the fall season because I know right now summer's just about ending and the fall season is just about to begin, and a lot of cool stuff's happening during this time of year here in the state of Ohio. Of course, we got a lot of migration from birds and insects, and of course a lot of our plant diversity is either there's some things coming in and coming out, and again, just a lot of cool stuff that's happening. But one of my most favorite things I love doing during the fall season is I love harvesting and talking about the Paw Paw plant. It's such a unique plant, and today's episode we're really going to be diving into the ecology. We're also going to be talking about tips and tricks on how to find this plant and its fruits, and we're definitely going to be talking about how to properly harvest the Paw Paw fruit, and we also will be adding some other fun facts as well. So actually today's episode we're going to be filming in a couple different locations. Currently I'm at the Paradise Nature Preserve, which is one of our parks just outside the village of Caledonia. And the other location I'm going to be filming at is a friend of mine's house outside of the Northmore School District in Morrow County. He has a lot of different kinds of Paw Paw patches that produce a lot of fruits, and that's where I'm really going to be diving in about this unique fruit and again how to properly harvest them. So all right guys, I hope you enjoy the program. So you may be wondering, well, how big do they get? Well, here's a nice little full-size one. Paw Paws are a great understory tree inside a forest. So as you look in this footage, you're seeing a lot of these larger trees, honey locusts, oaks, hickories, maple species. They're a lot bigger. Now these Paw Paws are just designed to basically kind of stay underneath these larger trees. So they average, between 12 to 25 feet. I know that sounds very large to us, but compared to other tree species that I just mentioned, those species definitely get a lot larger. When you're looking at bark characteristics, it's actually very flat. And as Paw Paw gets older, it actually kind of does get a little bit bumpy. Now, as we mentioned earlier, because this is not a huge tree, this is about as big as a Paw Paw will get typically. Now, I have seen some Paw Paw plants a little bit wider than this, but I'll admit I do have a pretty good sized hand, but I can basically put my hand around almost the whole circumference of this plant. So again, this is about an average sized Paw Paw tree. So when you want to identify this plant by its leaf, there's a lot of cool characteristics. When you're looking at the size of it, you're like, wow, that's a pretty good size for this tree. And you're right. So again, that's probably a good, great characteristic. But also too, if you were to kind of put it up to your face, this is just about as long as a typical human face. And if you look at the colors, it's got dark on top, light underneath. Not all tree species do that. Now, the leaf arrangement is what's called alternate. And if you're not familiar, it basically means you got a branch coming up here, another branch coming that's not directly opposite from it. So that's what alternative means. Also too, if you were to look at the single leaf blade, it is entire, which means that it doesn't have those serrated or tooth-like edges like some tree species do, kind of like cottonwoods and aspens, just to kind of give you an example. And it's got a nice distal tip right at the end, so it's got that nice little point. That's how I always remember. But probably the coolest way to identify this plant as it has its leaves, if you grab a leaf and if you crush it and you smell it, it actually smells like green peppers. At least to me, they smell like green peppers. Scientists think that these plants have some chemical compounds in their leaves that not a lot of insects are fans of. Now, we will be talking about later on about some special insects that actually highly depend on this plant as a host plant. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit later. Another cool identifying characteristic for the Paw Paw plant is the terminal bud. So this little weird thing right here that I'm touching. And it actually looks like and feels like a paintbrush. And I heard that there is someone in southern Ohio that uses this bud to paint. Makes sense, right? Guess they could be the next Bob Ross. Paint them happy trees. So another cool way you can identify this plant during the early spring, usually about late March to about April time here in Ohio, the Paw Paw flowers are such a unique color and shape. It's almost like a bell-shaped flower, maroon color, but what really makes it stand out is its smell. If you put your nose up to the flower, it almost smells kind of like a rotting meat kind of smell. That's because scientists believe on who pollinates the Paw Paw plant are beetles and flies, and having that rotting meat smell will attract those kinds of pollinators. What you're looking at right here, folks, is the Paw Paw Seeds. Now, depending on the size of the plant, I've had some Paw Paw fruits that had almost up to 20, and I've had some Paw Paw fruits that only had about a couple or so. So they're about the same size of a quarter, maybe a little bit less. But another cool fact that the Native Americans used to use with this plant was the seeds. They used to crush it up and they would put it in their hair to kill lice because they noticed not a lot of insects attack the Paw Paw plant. So you might be asking yourself, can I grow one in my yard? It depends on the kind of property that you have. As we mentioned before, when it comes to the habitat, they really thrive in creek bottom environments. But if you don't have that, here are some of the requirements that the Paw Paw plant needs in order to grow. When it comes to sunlight, it needs full to partial, but it's actually funny, when it's in its younger stage, it actually needs a lot of sun, but as it gets older, it needs more shade. For soil type, just needs a moist, well-drained, deep, rich soil. And if you need help with that, you can get some leaves and crush it up, add some organic matter into that. Needs protection from high winds because, as we mentioned before, it is a small understory tree, so it is not designed to handle very high winds. And they do require a cold winters and hot summers. And they need at least 32 inches of rainfall per year. So now that you have an idea on how to identify this plant, now we're going to be talking about the fruits. So this is basically the meat and potatoes section of this video. So we're going to talk about how to properly harvest this fruit, when's the proper time to eat them, what you can do with them, and some other interesting facts about the fruit. So hey everybody, we are at one of my friends, his property, which is in Morrow County, as I mentioned earlier in the video. That, again, it's kind of funny, when we first started at the Naturalist Nature Preserve, you saw all of those Paw Paw plants, but hardly any of them produce any fruit. And one of the reasons why that happens is because in order for a Paw Paw plant to bear fruit, it has to cross-pollinate with a different Paw Paw with different genetics. So again, it may look like there's a lot of plants at the Naturalist Nature Preserve, but they're basically genetically identical. So they basically clone each other. And when that happens, they can't really cross-pollinate. Well, where I am today, there's a lot of different Paw Paw patches with a lot of different probably genetics, and that's why it's able to bear fruit. And so now is the time to be finding fruit. I will admit I am a little bit late in the season. This is early October. Kind of more in central Ohio. We're usually about the end of September. You know, early October is where our time frame is. The further north you go, that time frame just keeps getting longer and longer. And usually when you're about middle of Michigan, I mean, you're talking about mid to late October. But then after that, most of the United States is done. So now I'm going to show you how to properly get the Paw Paw fruit, because unfortunately most of the fruits are way above us and we can't really get them very well. So what I usually do, obviously when I observe the tree and I want to find my fruit, just give it a good old shake, duck and cover, because yes, I have been hit before by a Paw Paw fruit, and some of those fruits are small and some of those fruits are large. So that was just an example. This tree did not have any, but this one right behind me, you're gonna see me kind of little do duck and cover. So this might be the funny part of the video. Oh, there we go, folks. Just about hit me.
but we got ourselves some nice Paw Paw fruits.
You may want to bring a bucket to protect yourself from pawpaws hitting your head, like Jeremiah did.
So now you just watch me how to get the Paw Paw fruits out of the plant. Just want to tell you that before you eat them, well, two things. You can eat them raw, or anything that calls for a banana, you can substitute with it. So you can do cookies, you can do breads, you can do cakes, ice cream, custards, jams, jellies. I mean, all sorts of things. Down in southeastern Ohio, just a few weeks ago, they just had the Paw Paw Festival, which is just south of Athens in southeastern Ohio, and they're famous for their Paw Paw beer. I've had it. It's very interesting tasting, but if you never tried it, give it a shot. See what you think. But again, you can't eat it raw. Now, I do want to tell you, before you dig your teeth into it, let's make sure that it's ready to eat. And you're probably saying, well, how? So, when you're looking at your paw paw, all right, color can be sometimes an indicator. Don't always let that be your first indicator, because some people will say, oh, it's got to have a lot of purple in it in order to harvest, or not so much purple. I've heard so much back and forth. I've seen all kinds of different colors when it comes to paw paws, for the darks and the lights. But basically, the big thing is smell. If you can smell, oh goodness, I call it a tropical smell. So mango, banana, very fruity aroma. That's a very great indicator that the paw paw is ready to eat. Also too, if you ever have shopped for avocados, you know how when you grab an avocado, you know how you kind of put your fingers in and kind of creates a small dent. That's also another great indicator that it's ready to harvest. If they are hard or very firm, do not eat them, because I have done that before, and yes, it can make you sick. My personal experience kind of gave me a migraine headache. Also too, kind of made my stomach upset. So no death experience or near death experience, but again, we don't want to eat them early. So this one, as you can see, got bruised up pretty bad, and like I mentioned earlier, since we are kind of later in the season, they do bruise very, very easy, because when you buy bananas, you have about a week or so, maybe less, all depending on temperature. But when it comes to paw paws, again, with temperature, you may only have a few days. Like these paw paws right now, they are ready to eat. It's either I eat them today, or I can put them in the fridge and give them a little bit more life, or tomorrow. After that, then they're probably basically gone. And actually, one time I grabbed a big pillowcase full of paw paws. I put them in my basement, which was cool. And I said, oh, they'll last. And about a couple days later, they turned into mush. So again, when you are going to harvest paw paws, definitely have a plan right after you harvest them. What are you going to do with them?
So now you're looking at this delicious paw paw that we just harvested, and you might be wondering, well, what does it taste like? I have heard from mango to banana, oranges, apples, all sorts of things, but boy, they are delicious.
So I also recommend, if you're going to eat the plant raw or cook with it, peel the skin. Now you can eat the skin. I will admit it leaves a very nasty aftertaste. It does have, I guess you call it, green peppery taste to it. Now I know a lot of you say, well, I like green peppers. Well, it's not a very sweet flavor with the skin. And I've also noticed too, and again, this is just my personal opinion, that when I eat a lot of the skin, it tends to give me some type of migraines. I think I have read that there are some chemical compounds, if you do, like we talked about earlier, harvest them early or eat a lot of the skin, they do have chemical compounds that do cause migraines to humans. So if you do harvest them early, it is not at the end of the world. I have found out, if you grab your paw paw and put it in a brown paper bag, just put them in your kitchen, it's usually room temperature, and leave it in there. Now, depending on how early you harvested them, I've waited up to a week to a couple weeks. And actually last year, something I tried, and you got to make sure you remember that you did this, If you do want to kind of speed up the process, put it in your car. Again, put it in a brown paper bag. But if you think about it, your car is a nice little oven, and it contains all that heat and all that humidity. And again, in my personal opinion, instead of waiting 2 weeks, I think I only waited probably about a week, or just a little over a week or so, when I harvested Paw Paws that were a little too early to eat. So go ahead and try it.
Paw Paw's fruits are, as we have talked about, very delicious, but they're also very nutritious, and they are a great superfood. We hear that term a lot, especially like with blueberries and pomegranates, but Paw Paws actually have more vitamin A and C than apples, grapes, and oranges. They also have a lot of potassium, magnesium. They also have a lot of those good fats like avocados do. And they also have a lot of antioxidants like blueberries. So we're very fortunate to have such a great superfood that grows here in the state of Ohio.
So I usually get asked this a lot. Why can I not find Paw Paws in a typical grocery store? Well, we have mentioned this in the video a couple times, but basically it has a very short lifespan. When you pick them, you may only have 1 to 3 days depending on temperature. Even if you do put them in the freezer or in a fridge, they just ripen very quickly than bananas would. The harvest season itself is very short. You may only have up to 1, maybe 2 weeks. Again, all depending on temperature. But the really big thing is habitat. We mentioned before that they thrive in those creek bottom environments, so gets a lot of moisture, has a lot of organic matter, has a lot of shade. Orchards, or I should say most orchards, are just not set up to be like that. So again, between specific habitats and very brief harvest season, that's why you don't see Paw Paws in a typical grocery store. So some special stores may sell Paw Paws, but for a short period of time. People are trying to cultivate them and trying to see, if we can breed them and make them a marketable product, but we just have not been successful on doing that yet.
Now that we have talked about the Paw Paw fruits, now we're just going to talk about some other fun facts about this unique plant. So Paw Paw, such a unique name. Probably wondering, where did the name come from? The idea is in the 1500s, when Spain came to Florida, they noticed that the Native Americans were utilizing this fruit and this plant. The name was given to this tree by the members of the Deasado expedition for the resemblance of the fruits to the tropical fruit papaya that they already knew.
So you're probably noticing this weird Paw Paw twig, and I split it on purpose because one of the other uses that the Native Americans used to do, I'm gonna pull it, is look at this and see how strong. I'm pulling it pretty hard. Probably have an idea of what kind of material they may have made, or items I should say. Yeah, what about ropes? And then that also includes baskets, nets. So other than the fruit, a lot of part of the other Paw Paw was used for many uses as well. And also with the fruit, if you kind of look how yellow it is, and a lot of the pioneers and Native Americans would use this as a dye for their clothing. It would make a nice yellow color.
So of course there's a lot of wildlife that benefit from the Paw Paw fruit, such as bears, raccoons, foxes, opossums, squirrels, and so much more. But what's really interesting, they have found out that mastodons actually used to eat Paw Paws. So when they found remains from their stomachs, they found actually Paw Paw seeds. So the Paw Paw plant has been around for a very long time. But the one type of wildlife that highly depends on the Paw Paw plant itself is the zebra swallowtail. So this swallowtail depends on the plant because it is what's called its host plant. So it needs to lay its eggs, and once the eggs hatch, and turn into the larvae the caterpillar form, they have to eat the pawpaw leaves. It's kind of like the monarch milkweed situation. So again, the zebra swallowtail needs this plant in order to complete the life cycle. So there were a lot of famous people who enjoyed the pawpaw fruits. Lewis and Clark have documents of them enjoying the fruits as along with their travels. Daniel Boone and Mark Twain have mentioned that they enjoy eating the fruit. And a couple of our U.S. presidents enjoy the pawpaws as well. Thomas Jefferson planted it behind his mansion at the Melicello. I have heard that it's not currently there, but there are records that he planted it there. And George Washington's actually favorite dessert was pawpaw custard. It's actually mentioned in a few songs in the movie Jungle Book, Bear the Necessities. There's a line talking about the pawpaw fruits.
Or maybe you've heard a song like this.
Picking up pawpaws, put 'em in a basket. Picking up pawpaws, put 'em in a basket. Picking up pawpaws, put 'em in a basket. Way down yonder in the pawpaw patch.
And this plant is so wonderful that the state of Ohio has adopted it as its state's native fruit in 2009. Now, I know you're probably thinking, well, what about apples? Well, apples are not native to North America. They are actually native to Europe. And a lot of our plants that we eat today are actually from other places around the world. But pawpaws are one of the few native plants that we have here in the state of Ohio.
Well, guys, I hope you enjoy that program. Hopefully you learned something new about the pawpaw plant and also about the pawpaw fruits. And I know this is kind of a little late in the season when I publish this out, but maybe hopefully for next year you can use this video. And if you have pawpaw plants around, maybe you can say, all right, here's some tips and tricks on how to find the fruit and maybe how to utilize the fruit as well. Well, guys, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Marion County Park District. Make sure to like, follow, share, subscribe. Also, our other social media accounts, our Facebook and our Instagram account as well. Well, guys, I hope you enjoy the program. Have fun, be safe, but most of all, go out and explore your Marion County parks. I'm Naturalist James Anderson from the Marion County Park District, and I'll see you all next time with Natural Lessons with me, Naturalist James Anderson. Take care.